So we are now moving on to consolidated financial statements part 4, where we address more complex consolidation scenarios. So in this chapter, the focus will be on two key areas. The impact of the parent's accounting method for the investment and the consolidation of complex group structures. So for the learning objectives, you are expected to be able to prepare consolidated financial statements when the parent's investment in subsidiary is measured at a method other than cost, and you will learn how to consolidate the financial statements of a complex group structure. So in the parent's separate financial statements, the investment in a subsidiary can be measured in three ways. First is at cost, and then in accordance with PFRS 9, which often means fair value, or using the equity method. So here's the key takeaway. Regardless of which method the parent uses in its separate financial statement, the final consolidated amounts should be the same. Why are they the same? Because the investment account and all its related effects, such as gains, losses, share of profit, are completely eliminated during the consolidation process. So let's look at the scenario where the investment is measured at fair value through profit or loss. So when a parent recognizes an unrealized gain or loss from the changes in fair value, that gain or loss must be eliminated in the consolidation working paper. Specifically, the effect is eliminated from the consolidated retained earnings and consolidated profit or loss. And also under the fair value method, any dividend received from the subsidiary is treated as dividend revenue in the parent's income statement. So this revenue will also be eliminated against the subsidiary's retained earnings in consolidation. Then onto the equity method. So for uh, this method adjusts the investment balance to reflect the parent's share of the subsidiary's activities. So the investment is continuously adjusted for the parent's share of the subsidiary's profit or loss, other comprehensive income or OCI items, and dividends. It also accounts for the amortization of any fair value differential. So unlike the fair value method, under the equity method, a dividend received is not a revenue, but rather a reduction in the carrying amount of the investment. And since the investment balance already incorporates the share of the subsidiary's profit, so this share of profit must be eliminated during the consolidation process to avoid double counting. So a very helpful outcome of using the equity method is that the parent's retained earnings balance will already equal the consolidated retained earnings balance. So this simplifies yung computation in step 4 of the consolidation process. So now let's move on to the second topic, which is the complex group structures. So, a complex group structure or a complex structure exists when the parent gains control over an entity indirectly through a previously acquired subsidiary. And we classify these structures into two main types. We have the vertical group and the D-shaped or mixed group. In a vertical group, as the name suggests, so the chain of control flows straight down. So the parent's subsidiary, in this illustration S1, has its own subsidiary, which is S2. So since the parent controls S1, so P's control effectively extends to S2. For S2, this is often called as the subsidiary. And because P controls S1, S1 can't operate S2 independently. Therefore, all three entities, P, S1, and S2, are included in the consolidated financial statements. And then for the D-shaped or mixed group, so this is more intricate. So in this case, the parent has a direct interest in a subsidiary, S1, but then both the parent, or P, and S1 together hold a controlling interest in a third entity, in this case, S2. So in the example shown, as you can see, P directly controls S1 with 80%. And then they jointly control S2 because P has 25% direct interest and S1 has 30% interest, totaling to 55%. And since P controls S1, P also controls the 30% interest S1 holds in S2. So this indirect control, 30% combined, okay, with a direct interest of 25%, gives P control over S2. Thus, all three entities, namely P, S1, and S2, are included in the consolidated financial statements. The good news is that the overall consolidation procedure is similar to a simple structure. However, there is a key modification on the computations for goodwill in step 2 and non-controlling interest or NCI in step 3, which would require an indirect holding adjustment. So this adjustment is necessary because when P acquires S1 and S1 then acquires S2, the consideration for S2 is partly from S1's asset, which P partially controls. So in the goodwill calculation, only the consideration directly or indirectly provided by the parent is included. Again, in the goodwill computation, only the consideration directly or indirectly provided by the parent is included. So let's apply this to a vertical group, as shown in the example. So in the example, P owns 80% of S1 and S1 owns 60% of S2. For S1, P's controlling interest is 80%, and therefore the NCI is 20%. And then for S2, P has 48% indirect holdings computed by multiplying the 80% times 60%. So this means the NCI in S2 is 52%. So the NCI in S2, computed earlier at 52%, is composed of two groups. Okay? 12% is the indirect NCI via S1's outside shareholders, and 40% is the direct NCI from S2's own outside shareholders. And then in the goodwill computation, or step 2, remember to apply the indirect holding adjustment to the consideration transferred for the subsidiary, S2. Okay? So this ensures only piece portion of the investment is included in the goodwill calculation. And then similarly, in computing the NCI in step 3, an indirect holding adjustment is made for S2, and this accounts for the fact that a portion of the investment in S2 is held through S1's retained earnings, which NCI in S1 has a claim on. And that brings the end for the discussion on the advanced topics on consolidation.